Thank you for joining our event, the Flight Free Travel Surgery. We run this event annually, so it's a chance for people to put their questions direct to the experts. It's one of our series of online events. So at Flight Free UK, we run 5 or 6 online events every year, which aim to help people choose low carbon travel. And we might explore some of the issues, some of the climate issues surrounding flights and travel. And sometimes we do specific inspiration events, and this one is a specific questions event to answer your questions. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Our experts, as I introduced a little bit earlier, but I'll introduce them again. We have Claire from Claire's Footsteps, who is an experienced flight-free traveller who does lots of posting on Instagram about her travels. So we'll come to you in a second, Claire, for you to introduce yourself. Justin from Byway. So Byway is a flight-free travel platform, and Byway will book your holiday for you and support you while you're out there. And then we have Mark Smith, the man in seat 61, who probably needs the least introduction out of all of our panelists or our experts today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So it's great to see so many people here. If you could keep your microphone on mute, that would really help with the flow of the event. Please feel free to have your camera on or off. Just so you know, we are recording this event, but you won't appear on camera. The recording just focuses on the person who is actually speaking at the time. So don't worry about appearing on the recording. You won't be. But yeah, if you'd like to show your face to everybody who's here, then that's always lovely. But please don't feel obliged, especially as it's lunchtime. You might be eating your lunch, and that's fine too. So we will get cracking. And just another practicality about how this is going to work. Because there are lots of people here, which is wonderful. We won't have time for everybody to ask a question in person. So what we're going to do is ask you to write down your question and share it with us in the chat box. Then Matilda from our team will be reading out the questions, and some of them might be a little bit similar. So she might group some of the questions together, and hopefully we'll get through all of them. We have an hour to do that. So hopefully we'll get through we will get through as many questions as we can. And if any of you have experiences or answers that you want to share with each other, that's also really helpful. So a lot of the time it's down to where we have personally been in our own experiences that can really help. So yeah, please feel free to get chatty in the chat, and we will start to answer your questions. But first, yeah, our experts will introduce themselves. So Claire, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Claire, and I'm Claire's Footsteps on Instagram and YouTube, and I also run clairesfootsteps.com. And in the last few years, I've really started niching down into overland transport. In 2019, I traveled from Bali to London without flying. And then in the following years, I've been doing a lot more no flights travel around Europe. And also when I do travel a bit further afield, I do also focus a lot on trains and ferries. And I always try and make, some sort of long overland journey where possible as well.
Thank you, and fabulous to have you, Claire. Justin, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, I work at Byway. I'll explain Byway in a second. I've been there 2 years, just over 2 years. I work as a trip builder as part of their concierge or sales team, which has been really fun. My last trip is not as exciting as Bali. I did go to Wallonia, French-speaking Belgium, for a week, a couple of weeks ago, which was awesome and would highly recommend. And then Byway, if you haven't heard of Byway and that's new to you, is a slow travel package provider where we build trips to Europe and some parts of Northern Africa to include all overland travel and ferries, as well as all accommodation along your route as well. And then we also, a big selling point is we have a 24/7 WhatsApp team, which are amazing at handling disruption, because as I'm sure everyone on the call is aware, it doesn't always go to plan. So we do have a contingency in place to help with that as well. So yeah, lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Justin. And we should point out at this point that Flight Free UK supporters get a discount on a Byway holiday. You use the code FlightFree 2026. Hopefully that's easy to remember. But we can also put that code in the chat, and we will follow up this event by email with everybody, and we'll include those details as well. So that's a nice little bonus for anyone who wants to book a Flight Free holiday. And then finally, over to you, Mark, for a quick introduction. Go ahead.
Hello, well, I'm Mark Smith, and I run a website called The Man in Seat 61, seat61.com. I've been running it since 2001. Did we even have the internet in those days? We must have done. It's designed to help people travel overland by train or ferry, and occasionally bus, around Europe and around the world. I started it to fill a gap between how easy it is to do that and how difficult it can be to find out how to do it, either from the rail industry itself or from the wider travel industry. And I think that's a gap that to some extent still exists today.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, you're right. It does still exist, doesn't it? But hopefully we're closing that gap, and your fantastic knowledge is definitely doing that. So thank you to our experts. We will move on to the questions, but I'm going to selfishly go first with a question to get us started. So I have bought an Interrail pass, which I bought in the sale in November last year, which, by the way, I would recommend as a good tip to keep costs down when you're traveling by train. Buy an Interrail pass in the sale. You have 11 months to use it. So I haven't even gone on holiday yet. I didn't even know where I was going to go when I bought the pass. But we're considering Slovenia, and I know there's a night train that goes to Ljubljana. So that goes from Stuttgart. So we can travel, and this blows my mind. We can travel from the UK all the way to Ljubljana, and that only takes one day of our Interrail pass because it's a night train. So we depart on day one, and that only counts as one day's travel, which is amazing. And then but we do take 2 days to get back, and it's a 4-day pass. So here's my question to Mark and Justin, if you know, and Claire, maybe you've been to Slovenia as well. For that one remaining day, where should we go?
Oh, right. You could always go to Trieste. Have you thought of that? I mean,
Oh, on the coast.
yeah, it's one of those most underrated Italian cities. It's not on the tourist trek through Florence and Venice and Rome, is it?
Yeah.
But it's an incredible place, and it's not far from Ljubljana. And there are a couple of trains a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon that'll get you back. Be a long day, but worth doing.
Okay, great advice. Justin, any thoughts?
If Mark's taken the city option, I'll go for the national park, and you could head towards Behinge. I think you probably have to change in Jesenice. If I've butchered that pronunciation, I'm apologising to everyone in advance. But yeah, it should be all regional trains, so you should be able to get to Jesenice and then cross to Behinge, and then you could have a pretty nice hike in the mountains before heading home in the evening.
That does sound amazing. Claire, have you got anything to add?
I've only been to sorry, my pronunciation is awful as well. Ljubljana and Bled. I believe you can get a train to Bled. I think you can get a train or a bus. This was quite a lot of years ago, but yeah, that's my only real experience of Slovenia. But it is beautiful there, so definitely recommend going there if you can.
Well, thank you. And that's my holiday sorted. So let's hand over to everyone else. So I'm going to hand over to Matilda now, our events manager, and she'll look after you for everybody's questions. Thank you, Matilda.
Hi everyone. Okay, so let's kick off with a question. How do ferries and cruises compare for carbon footprint versus flying or train travel?
I don't know the full facts and figures off the top of my head, but fully it generally does seem to go as train travel is the most sustainable, emits the lowest amount of carbon, then ferries, then planes. I know ferries aren't, I wouldn't call them super carbon efficient, but ultimately I think they are better than flying. With cruises as well, they obviously have a load of other things to think about, such as putting pressure on places that they stop at. So for example, a cruise that will stop in Mallorca, can put a lot of pressure on the cruise ports and that sort of thing, and doesn't always necessarily benefit the cruise port. So there's also that to consider as well.
Can I come in here? It's the ferries, of course, don't just carry foot passengers. They carry motorists, they carry freight. And it's to some extent an academic arbitrary decision as to how you allocate the ferry emissions. The figures produced by DFT, I haven't got them to hand, but are really, really low for foot passengers because the ferry is there largely, I mean, talk to the ferry companies, they're there for the freight, then they're there for the motorists. They can carry a lot of extra foot passengers at marginal cost. So the carbon footprint of a foot passenger on a ferry is really, really low. And that's very different from cruises, which of course don't carry freight, don't carry uh, motorists. They have a lot of space designed for recreation, and that's a completely different kettle of fish. But don't be worried about taking a ferry. The figures for foot passengers on ferries are actually similarly low to trains. I think they're in that ballpark.
It's a very good point.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that one?
I haven't really got anything to add there. I think Mark kind of nailed it.
Okay, brilliant. Next question. Someone said advice around trains to the, I'm going to butcher this, but Lofoten Islands in Norway in September.
I can start on that if you like. What I would recommend is, I'm not sure, I'm going to assume you're starting in the UK. Sorry, I haven't seen the chat question, but if you head sort of via Belgium, Northern Germany, and then coming up, I would recommend going via Norway and not heading via the Stockholm to Narvik, because there's a Stockholm Narvik sleeper train, but it very commonly gets cancelled last minute, and you're then stuck halfway up Sweden needing to take a flight or some sort of other transport. Whereas if you go via Oslo, Trondheim, Bodø, you'll find that those trains are more reliable, and then you can get the ferry across to Svolvær, I think, on the Lofoten Islands. So I would be looking at the Norwegian route to get you there. But I would also recommend making sure you've got the time, because that's going to take you a few days. Probably fastest would take you 6 or 7 days to get there. So just make sure you've got the time.
Okay, brilliant. Oh, Claire, do you want to add something?
I was just going to say you can take a ferry from Kiel to Oslo, and it is absolutely amazing. It's quite a pricey ferry, although actually when you're on there, the catering and the spa facilities for the quality you get are really cool. And they've got a sauna which just overlooks. It's got like water ceiling windows. And it's just a really amazing like ferry experience. It's called Colour Line. Yeah, it was one of my favorite ones I've done.
How long does that ferry take, Claire?
About 24 hours. It's amazing views as well if you do it in the summer. Really, like, 'cause you go past Denmark and then you go into sort of all the fields, and yeah, it's really, really nice.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so next question is recommendations for lesser known flight-free trips from London.
Okay, well, how about a really, really lesser known one, Algeria. I've always wanted to go there. I haven't got there yet, just for a line and a song to see the marketplace in old Algiers. But yeah, take Eurostar to Paris or Lille, a TGV from Lille or Paris down to Marseille, and there are direct ferries from Marseille to Algiers. And if you like, you can take the train along the North African coast to Tunisia and come back on a ferry from Tunis to Marseille. So that's this pretty much qualifies as a lesser known destination from the UK.
I've done that trip as well. Yeah, I did exactly that. So I did Eurostar to Paris, down to Marseille, and then it's about 24-hour crossing to Algiers. Algiers is an incredible country. It's a bit difficult to get a visa for. I can recommend a company who can help with that. But it's still a bit, yeah, visa is a bit difficult. But actually, when you're traveling there, it's a really amazing place. Just beautiful and lovely people. So definitely recommend. And I was at a travel conference this week, and I had a meeting with the people from the Tunisian Tourist Board, and they said you can also get a ferry to Sicily from Tunis now. So that could be a really nice like circular trip.
They sound awesome. Similar thing. I'd probably say Corsica, like similar, exactly the same sort of tactic of getting to Marseille and then a ferry across to Corsica. Although we're seeing a lot of inquiries towards Finland and the Baltics, which is sort of maybe slightly more off the beaten track for a UK market. The train system up there is actually really reliable, really good from everything we've heard. And you can make it a beautiful round trip by going kind of through Scandinavia and then looping back round through Poland. So you sort of see a lot of different cultures within one trip, which could be quite fun.
Yeah, they all sound brilliant. Quite a lot of variety as well, which is handy. We've got a question now from someone who's traveling to the Czech Republic in September with Byway, but they usually tour the UK and Europe by motorbike or car, and they want to know, does driving or riding really create fewer greenhouse gas emissions than flying within Europe?
Shall I come in on that one just because we have quite a lot of carbon information, and this also relates to the very first question about the ferry. So I will share this in because very handy chart which shows exactly what the emissions are in comparison, referencing the DFT figures that Mark mentioned. If you're driving, obviously it depends what type of car, how big it is, what the fuel is. But if we're kind of taking an average, a single occupancy car will be about the same as flying. If there are two people in the car, then you're halving the emissions, so it's therefore more efficient than flying, about double. And if you're taking a family of four, then you can quarter those emissions per passenger we're talking about. So that is much more efficient than flying. Whereas if you're a family of four flying, then you have to multiply it by four because you're taking up a seat each. So yeah, there's a little bit. There's a few calculations you'd have to do, but that's generally the picture. And again, it depends what type of vehicle. The bigger the vehicle, the higher the emissions. But broadly, if you're driving alone, it's pretty much the same as flying. The difference, though, we find is you are less likely to go as far if you are driving. So, it's easy to fly to the far reaches of the Middle East or whatever. It's much harder to drive there. So, overall, your emissions will probably be lower just because of the distance traveled. But yeah, that's kind of broadly the picture.
Brilliant. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to add to that one, or shall we move on? Move on it is. Someone asked, I don't know if this is a rhetorical question, but I'll ask it anyway. Someone's asked, Mark, how do you keep your amazing website up to date?
I keep asking myself the same question. I just think I've got it up to date, and something happens. I keep my eyes on the trade, on the media, and the trade press for rail industry news. People feedback. People tell me that something's changed if they've got to somewhere and discovered that Ljubljana station is a building site, as it is at the moment. That sort of thing. So it definitely helps if people feedback when they travel, but it does take an awful lot of keeping my eye on Google alerts for when something pops up in the media. And also, I travel around myself. If I know something's changing, I generally try and head off there and see if I can get photographs and personal experience of it.
I was going to ask that, Mark. How much research do you do?
Not enough. I need to go more places.
Okay, so next question is, someone says they've been flight free since 2016 and have mostly holidayed in the UK and have also made a couple of Eurostar trips. They say now that their daughter is 10, they're hoping to try and get a bit further afield by train and are considering Italy for next year. They were wondering if anyone could speak to how feasible traveling around Italy is by train and how doable it is to be car free while they're there.
Oh, this is really simple. You can just hop on Eurostar to Paris, 2 hours and 20 minutes. You change trains and stations in Paris, and you have a choice. You can either take the French TGV, where there's two or three a day from Paris to Turin and Milan, or you can travel with the Italians. Train Italia have two Frecciarosas from Paris to Turin and Milan every day. So you can actually leave London in the morning, have lunch in Paris, and have dinner in Italy. Best place to change trains and stay overnight is Turin, fantastic city. Like Trieste, it's one of the most underrated cities in Italy. And then, of course, you've got trains direct from Turin to Venice, Florence, Rome, Naples. If you want to visit the cities and even the smaller places like Siena or Lucca, you don't need a car. In fact, cars are liability because there are lots of ZTL traffic-free zones in places like Florence, controlled by camera. It's very easy to drive into one by mistake and get fined. So yeah, leave your car at home. If you want to explore the countryside around Tuscany, then fine, hire a car for a day or two. But if you want to visit the cities, train is the way. It's got an excellent high-speed rail network.
Yeah, can I add to that? I always usually say that Italy is probably the best place to visit with, as a initial flight-free travel trip because, like Mark was saying, the trains are excellent. They are quick. They're usually on time compared to some other countries in the area. And I did the sleeper train that goes from Milan down to Palermo, and that's one of the longest trains in Europe. It's a 22-hour train, I think. And it's the train goes on board a ferry. So the train gets to right to the end of mainland Italy, and then it gets split into parts, and then it gets sort of trundled on board this ferry and gets locked there. And then you can get up and you can see it on the ferry, and then you get to Sicily, and then there's another sort of whole shift around. But it's such a cool experience for any sort of rail fans. It's a real must do. And then Sicily has quite good trains as well. So you can really see the whole country by rail.
Oh, if I could just come in again, I forgot to mention one thing if we're talking about getting from the UK to Italy. From September the 10th this year, there's going to be a new sleeper train run by a startup company, a Dutch startup company called European Sleeper, that will link Brussels to Milan direct and actually stop at Como. So if you want to go to Como, it's just straight through from Brussels. So no need to cross Paris. A simple same station change in Brussels. You'll be able to leave London in the afternoon with plenty of time to get down south, whether you live up north or in the West Country or wherever. Overnight from Brussels to Milan, you'll wake up on the Gotthard route in scenic Switzerland. It takes the scenic route over the top. It doesn't go through the long base tunnel, and we'll get into Milan at about 11:45 the following morning. So that's going to become a really good way of getting to Italy.
Oh, sorry. You go, Anna.
Oh, I was just going to add 11s go free with Interrail, so that might be an option. But yeah, we have an advice article on our website, How to Travel with Children, if you would like to have a look. And also, I would really recommend following some of the family travelers on Instagram or on social media that share their travels with children. It often can feel very daunting to take your children on the train, especially for such a long journey, but we really do get the feedback that parents and kids, it's so much easier than they think, and children love being on a train. So yeah, if you need any more specific advice on that, just get in touch.
Yeah, I was just actually going to say the same thing. Like, if your child's under 12, the Interrail pass for free is fantastic. And then kind of tying in as well to what the others have said, the regional network, if you've got spare days on your Interrail pass, so days that you're not doing long distance travel on, and you've got a couple of extra days to use, like the regional trains are all flexible. You don't need any seat reservations, so you can just jump on any of them and they'll take you into the heart of most towns in Italy that are like amazing to go and visit. So yeah, it's incredibly flexible. There's loads of opportunities to sort of explore as you wish. Yeah, Italy would be a great choice.
Brilliant. We actually have a follow-up question to that one, which says, I expect that new train to Italy won't be on Interrail. Does anyone know? Mark, do you know if it will be?
It should certainly be on Interrail because the two existing routes, Paris to Berlin and Brussels to Berlin and Prague, are on Interrail. And in fact, I know it's on Interrail. I've actually literally got an Interrail reservation on the European sleeper from Brussels to Milan for the inaugural journey on the 10th of September. So yeah, it certainly can. I've got one.
Brilliant. I'm excited to see how that goes then. Next question is, how much is an Interrail pass and how much in the sale?
quick one. It depends what age bracket you fall into as to how expensive your Interrail pass will be. So yeah, as we mentioned, under 12s it's free. Then you get a youth pass, then you get an adult pass, then you get a senior pass. It's in the sale, it depends because the last November 25% off. I mean, they're practically giving them away. But spring, so they typical sales every year. This spring it was only 15% off. But yeah, any discount is worth it. But for an adult 4-day, and it depends how many days travel you are paying for. So an adult 4-day pass in the sale is about £180, but there are many variables.
Thank you. Is this next question, I guess it's a little bit similar. This says, is there an easy way to work out whether a rail pass or Interrail pass or booking specifically is better value?
If I can come in here, the quick answer is no, there isn't. And I tell you why. European long distance rail fares work like airfares. And you know how everyone on the plane pays a different price? Well, it's sort of like that, depending on how busy that day is, how far in advance you book. So if a rail pass is, for example, €60 a day, which is more or less what an adult 4-day pass works out as, you don't know whether Amsterdam to Berlin regular point-to-point price is €37.99, which is the cheapest possible price, or about €150, which is the most expensive possible price. It'll be somewhere in between. So until you go online and look, you don't know whether it's bigger or smaller than the €60 that the pass is costing you. So there isn't a quick way of just looking at an itinerary and saying, oh yes, a pass is better. However, there's another reason for buying a pass, and that is flexibility. The cheap tickets are no refunds, no changes, this specific train only. If you buy a pass, you've got freedom. You can change your mind, you can reroute. If something happens, you can reschedule or even reroute around the problem. And if you're going to travel very extensively, even if it costs a bit more than point-to-point tickets, you're still better off going with the rail pass, because if you booked it with a stack of 20 cheap advance purchase tickets and something went wrong, national rail strike, flood, fire, landslide, to one of those journeys, it would collapse like a house of cards. So do definitely consider the rail pass.
I can help on this as well. So at Byway, when we build a trip, our technology works all that out for you. So when we build a trip, it will automatically select whether or not it's cheaper with an Interrail or point to point, which is what we'd call like a normal ticket, a point to point ticket. And that's based off live dynamic pricing from each operator, all sort of integrated, which makes your life a lot easier. The other bit I'd just highlight is that the Eurostars are a major contributing factor to whether or not an Interrail pass makes sense for your trip. The closer you get, Eurostar only have a certain amount of Interrail seats on any given Eurostar that day. And once they've sold out, that's it. It's like a red line. And then you're buying a normal ticket. So you might have bought an Interrail pass, bought all of your reservations around Europe, but then not bought the Eurostar, and you're ending up paying £200 for a ticket to Paris all of a sudden. So I'd just recommend, if you're thinking about an Interrail pass, getting on the Eurostar as early as possible, because once they sell out, they're gone. Whereas I think TGVs and Italian trains and a lot of the others don't have a limit on the amount of Interrail seats that are available.
And I should also point out, sorry, I feel like I've been misleading by saying your 4-day pass is £180, which it is, but you have to buy seat reservations on top of that. So your holiday is going to be more expensive than that. So as an illustration, when we went to Como a couple of years ago, it was £260 in total. And that was a 4-day rail pass plus the reservations for the Eurostar and the TGV. And it was at the time where the direct train from Paris to Milan was not running. So we took 5 different trains, some of which required a seat reservation. So you are always going to pay extra to what the pass is. So typical, that holiday was £260 in total. And that's, I suppose one of the advantages is that even though, as you just pointed out, Justin, very useful information, you need to book in advance, because otherwise there won't be tickets available on that train, but the Eurostar seat reservations are always the same price. So that's reassuring. You will always be paying. I think it's currently €32 for a Eurostar. I mean, they go up every year as everything does, but yeah, you'll always be paying the same price for the Eurostar seat reservations as long as they are available. A TGV reservation is typically €18. Again, if it's available, you can get it even on the day if it's available. So that helps as well. And we also have a how to Interrail article on our website, which might be helpful.
I was just going to say one thing with that that you mentioned earlier, Anna, is also with the Interrail. It's also if you're stacking journeys together on one day, that is where you can have the really big savings. So if you are taking multiple trains in a day, especially, I mean, it might be a bit of a long day, but especially if they are longer distance trains, then for me, that's where I've seen the most savings.
Sorry, one final point on this as it helps. If you do not live in London, this is where massive savings can be made because the UK network's so expensive. If you do not live in London and I don't know, I live in Winchester. You live in Winchester and then you go up to London, you take the Eurostar out of the country that day, your trip from Winchester to London is free. And that counts for anywhere in the UK. So even if you live in Edinburgh, which is another expensive trip down to London, that would be free on your Interrail pass if you take the Eurostar out of the country on the same day as you leave home. So that can automatically save you maybe hundreds of pounds.
This question is of a similar vein, and you've all kind of partially covered it anyway, but this person wanted to know, with the seat reservations in mind, is it more suitable to get an Interrail pass for within country travel rather than the long journeys where you need the reservations?
I don't think so. I think it's just as easy to go internationally as within countries. France, Italy, and Spain are the countries where you're going to need a seat reservation costing at least 10 to 13 euros for every intercity trip, whether it's domestic or international. On the other hand, you can happily travel between Prague, Germany, Austria without any reservations. I mean, it's a good idea to make them because it means you won't have to stand up if it's very busy. But there is this line across Europe, France, Italy, Spain, where everything requires a reservation, and then to the east of that, it's usually optional, and you can often travel without one.
Okay, so this next person wants to say, do train tickets have group discounts, for example, for a large family?
No one knows the answer. Is there anywhere we could find the answer? Do you think that we could point someone towards the
Well,
answer for that?
I can say that there are group rates, but the group rates are usually for 9 people or more. That's group travel, and I'm certainly not an expert on that. When it comes to family travel, every country has a different way of doing it. There are discounts for big families in Spain, but it's usually for Spanish residents. On the other hand, if you're traveling with the Austrian or German railways, kids under 16 or is it under 15 go free if they're accompanying an adult on a reduced fare, which is really, really good. In fact, I think we should do that in the UK. It would be better than having to know about a family rail card.
Yeah, I just saw someone say in the UK you get group travel for three or more. I know from the train from my town to the nearest city, you can get a group discount. I know I've done that before, but yeah, I don't know about other countries. I normally travel either on my own or with my partner.
This next question is, when planning a flight-free trip, where do you start? How far in advance would you book? What about budgeting? This person's particularly interested in what Mark thinks about this, as they'd love to plan trips independently.
Well, I start with where do I want to go and researching not just the place I think I want to go, but maybe there's somewhere around it or somewhere on the way to stop off. That's how the trip comes together. I'm not actually good at planning trips years in advance, and I know a lot of people are. And in a rail context where a lot of train companies open bookings a month ahead, 3 months ahead, trying to plan a trip in October when it's January, you actually end up banging your head against a brick wall. It's actually easier to book it closer, but not too close because it is cheaper the further ahead you book. But you don't need to book it as far ahead as you would book a flight, for example, because of the smaller booking horizons.
Do you know what those booking horizons are, Mark? Because is it something like 6 months for Eurostar, but a bit longer for other trains, or maybe that's the other way around?
Oh gosh, 11 months for Eurostar,
Okay, yeah.
up to 12 months for Deutsche Bahn, because that comes to a stop at the end of the timetable in December. So it starts with at a year and gets shorter as we get closer to December. Italy is theoretically 4 months. They're trying to extend it to 6 months, but basically they load trains when they feel like it, so it varies. And confusingly, they load some trains and not others. So I get an email saying, "Why are there no trains in the morning? There's just trains in the afternoon." I say, "Well, the data's not complete. You're looking you're trying to look 4 months ahead." France loads 4 months ahead, but extends that to a further month or so over the summer. Then we have the Lithuanian railways, which are 30 days. We have the Estonian railways, where you can book that, a whopping 7 days in advance, or is it 10? I forget. But yes, it's all different. And the key thing is, it's not as far ahead as planes. You don't need to think of where you want to go in a million years' time. You can actually live in the present a bit more and think, where do we want to go next month? Or where do we want to go in a couple of months' time?
So really straightforward then. Thanks, Mark.
I would say agree with that, apart from if you know that you're definitely going to want to get a Eurostar in a specific date in 3 months' time, I would say just book it because it's going to be cheaper the further in advance you book. Like that is just it's just dynamic pricing. And also for ferries, I would try and book them as soon as possible because they can go up as well. But the I was going to say the train I took from Milan to Palermo, that didn't come out until about a month in advance, and I was just every day I was going on because I didn't want to miss it, and I knew the particular date I wanted to go, so I was just checking it every day. But yeah, I kind of would start usually by booking the Eurostar or booking my outgoing journey from the UK, and then considering where I want to go around that. But the great thing about nearly everywhere in Europe is you can get there without flying, and a lot of places are very, convenient comparatively to get to without flying. So yeah, just sort of start a plan and go from there, really.
Yeah, Claire's got spot on as well. Just to add, a useful tool that I use a lot, and even in my job, like if you're looking for inspiration on where to go and like just simple logistics, if you have an Apple device, Apple Maps has a toggle where you can turn on public transport, which Google Maps doesn't have. And it then just highlights all of the train lines all over Europe. And it makes your life 1,000 times easier to see what actually connects to each other, through just, and obviously it will scale as you zoom in and out. But I find that really useful because some people want to go to a town and you're like, oh, that sounds great. But then you realize it's actually not next to a network, but then there is another town that's amazing, which is, and it would actually link really nicely with the rest of the trip. So have a look at Apple Maps if you have an Apple device. I find it a really useful tool.
Can I also do a plug for you, Justin Byway? Because as I've heard from some of your customers, you often kind of take the risk, if that's the right word, to say, so you would book people's trips before the booking actually happens, knowing that it's quite likely that that booking will exist in the next month or two. So that's quite that might be quite nice for people who do want to book a little bit in advance. They can book through you, and then you kind of absorb that the logistics and maybe the stress of not knowing when exactly that train is going to be. So the client knows that they're traveling to this place on this date, but you are the ones who actually, as soon as that train becomes available, that's when you book it. Is that how it works?
That's exactly it. So we, as you say, we can take bookings up to, well, however, like, I don't know, 12, 14 months in advance. And we base our timetables for those future trips on current timetables. So there may be a little bit of wiggle room on the actual timings by up to 30 minutes or so, but we have pretty good confidence that the trains will stay pretty similar. And as you say, like, not myself personally, I don't work in that team, but the ticketing team have eyes on all of the booking horizons, like Mark mentioned. So they're in there as soon as those tickets get released, and then we can pick them up as we go. So it does take the stress out of all of that. And then also, if, like, for example, France have recently announced that there's going to be disruption between Paris and Milan this September, October, because we've got an eye on all of the disruption across Europe, we can then, any customers that have a trip already sort of including that route, we'll let them know that we're having to reroute them, and we'll work with the customer to make sure they get where they need to go that day. So we take the stress out of all of that planning.
So follow up to that question, same person has said that they're planning for Istanbul specifically. So if you have any insight to traveling to Istanbul or Turkey in general, please take the floor.
Yeah, I can say that one. Oh, absolutely amazing place, and easier than you think to get to without flying. It does take a little while, so you need a bit of time. But what I would probably recommend doing, there's a few ways, but I would probably get the Eurostar to Brussels or Amsterdam, and from either you can get a sleeper train to Vienna. My recommendation at the moment, unless it's changed, would be to go from Amsterdam, because at the moment the Nightjet do their new mini cabins, which are basically sleeping pods on a train. If you're traveling solo, or if you're sort of in an uneven group, that can actually work out a lot cheaper than getting the new cabins, because they can be quite pricey. Get to Vienna. And then you can take the Dacia, I believe it's called, which goes all the way to Bucharest. That is quite a long sleeper train, so you can stop off in Budapest or Transylvania if you like. And then you can take, I think this train, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the train between Bucharest and Sofia can be a bit seasonal, but there are buses if the train's not running. And then from Sofia, you can take a sleeper train to Istanbul, or in the summer, there is a direct sleeper train from Bucharest. But again, that's about a 24-hour train. So all of these places, you can stop off on the way. You don't have to do all of that direct. But that, in my opinion, is the best route. And it's a really cool trip that takes in a lot of Europe, and then ends in Istanbul, which is one of the best cities in the world. So definitely recommend.
I took my family to Istanbul on the train last August. That was our summer holiday. And yes, we did stop off in Prague and Budapest and Brasov for Castle Bran, Dracula's castle, and in Bucharest. And you build the journey around the Bucharest to Istanbul train. That's the daily service. It's all year round, but in winter you have to change trains, pick up a sleeper train at Dimitrovgrad. In the summer, from June to early October, there's a direct Kuşet car, a Turkish Kuşet car, all the way from Bucharest to Istanbul, leaves at 10:46 in the morning, gets in at 9:56 into Istanbul Halkali the following morning. It's got 4 berth compartments. You can book individual berths, or you can book, we had a 4-berth compartment all to ourselves for the family. And it's a fantastic journey across Bulgaria at slow speed with lots of clickety-clack on jointed rail, time to stretch your legs on the platforms at Gorna Orjahovica or Dimitrovgrad. And yeah, Istanbul is an absolutely fantastic city. This is a journey where you should use an Interrail. It's one of the few journeys where you can say, yes, an Interrail makes sense here, both financially and for the flexibility that you've got to cope with anything that happens on the way, to flex your journey. But I would recommend that you buy ordinary tickets between Bucharest and Istanbul, because it is easy to buy the Bucharest to Istanbul Kuşet ticket with Kuşet reservation included. You can book it online with the Romanian Railways on their international booking site. It is absolutely impossible to buy a reservation on its own to go with an Interrail pass for that journey. It's only about €56 for the ticket and the reservation together. And remember, a rail pass is about €50 a day, €60 a day at least, plus €14 for the reservation. So it actually if you just buy ordinary tickets for that bit, it makes your life easier and it makes financial sense.
Brilliant, thank you. This next person says that they would love to go island hopping in Greece, but how can they get there by train?
I can help a bit. Well, the way we sell Greece is heading down through Italy and getting towards Ancona and Bari to pick up the ferry, which heads across to either Igoumenitsa or Patras. And then you can sort of, play around on the islands as you wish. I believe that you can get via Eastern Europe if you come in via Bulgaria, north of Thessaloniki. But I think, and I'm sure someone else can confirm or deny, that you have to get a bus across the border into Greece, because I don't believe there are international rail networks into Greece. So if you're trying to do the whole thing by rail, I think you have to take a small bus, or you can easily get to southern Italy into Puglia and then get a ferry across, which is nice and straightforward.
Excellent. We've got a question, just to go back quickly to the question on Turkey. Someone asked, do you still have to get off the sleeper at the Turkish border in the middle of the night for passport and security?
Yes, you do. Currently, it's being done at Edirne rather than Kapıkule. They've moved the border point for some reason while they're doing some line rebuilding work. And of course, now with EES, you have to get off at Svilengrad on the Bulgarian side as well to do all the fingerprinty EES ETS sort of stuff, which is a bit of a pain, and it's late at night, but it's all part of the fun. And I did it with my family last year, and we survived. And you can get back into your sleeping berth and sleep the rest of the way because you're not into, no need to get up early. You're not into Hal Kelly until 9:56 arrival time.
Brilliant, thank you. A couple of questions on EVs. Someone says, if we would like to use our electric vehicle car and use ferries in between, how does this compare in emissions? And someone else has said, how is the EV charging situation in Europe? Has anyone got any experience with cars?
I'm not sure we have any EV experts on the panel, but we have had some input from someone who drives an EV around Europe on our own website, which is how to travel by EV. So all of these articles that we've been mentioning, by the way, we will put links to in the follow-up email, so you'll have those at your fingertips. But this article is very helpful and shows the realistic range and some of the charging ports and points and what type you need and where you could typically find them. In terms of emissions, EV is lower emission than driving a regular petrol or diesel car. Fundamentally, it depends where the electricity comes from. But to reassure you, if you're driving through Europe, the majority of the electricity grid is powered by renewables. So that is different to what we have here in the UK, and that is great for keeping the emissions of your holiday down. So yeah, I'll put those links in our follow-up information, and that should help.
So next question is, my husband and I are thinking of going on our honeymoon to Norway and wondered whether there are any good hiking areas or places to stay along the train route from Bergen to Oslo.
There's Flom, so you can take the train between Bergen and Oslo. I'm not 100% sure of the station that it goes from, but you can then take a train down, which is called the Flom Railway, and it takes you to a lovely little fjord town, which is called Flom, and it's very, very, very beautiful. I was there in February, so the weather and the visibility weren't amazing, but it's got fjords. So if you're there in the summer, there'll be lots of hiking, and yeah, it's just a little detour. But the railway in itself, so it's spelled FLA, and then it's got the little circle accent, and then and the Flom Railway itself is very famous within Norway as a really scenic, beautiful railway.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire. We are getting towards the end, so I'm going to try and be quick with questions because there are a few more still. This person says, how do I get reservations for seats and or couchettes on a sleeper when I've got myself an Interrail pass? So far, I found it easier to book all that directly as individual tickets from Rail Europe.
I can come in here if you'd like. Basically, it depends on the sleeper train. But let's say it's a night jet run by OBB. If you go to the OBB website, oebb.at, you select your route, change the passenger details to add a discount. You add the Interrail Eurail discount to the passenger details. Then when you run the inquiry, you see the reservation charge for the sleeper train. The Hungarian railways work in the same way. So if you're booking from from Budapest to Berlin or Budapest to Bucharest, then you'd change the passenger details to add the Interrail discount to the booking and then just run the inquiry. So it can be done, but it depends on which train you're talking about. And that's basically why I've started an Into Our Reservations page, which goes through every country, traveling to every other country, which websites do you use to book the daytime trains and the sleeper trains, because it's different in every case.
Thanks, Mark. We've got two questions on Portugal now. Someone said, I want to do Lisbon by train this summer, but from a cursory glance, the train from Madrid to Lisbon seems really long and unreliable. And someone else has said, is Portugal easy to get to by train? It seems that there aren't many trains from Spain to Portugal.
Well,
Okay.
at the moment, we have we have no direct train from Madrid to Lisbon because it stopped during the pandemic and Spanish railways used it as an excuse to stop the sleeper train. So Madrid to Lisbon uses three different trains, one Spanish and two Portuguese. It's an adventure. It takes a day. It's very scenic, but it requires at least two tickets to book on two different websites or use an Interrail, of course. The other way into Portugal, which can be easier, is to use the Vigo to Porto train. So you can take a train from Madrid to Vigo, then take the evening train from Vigo down to Porto, and then of course you can visit Porto and then catch a train to Lisbon.
Yeah, I was going to recommend that Vigo route. Another alternative would be heading to Seville and then having maybe a night or two in Seville, and then you can get a 2-hour Flix bus to Faro, and then get the pretty comfortable Portuguese train up from Faro straight into Lisbon. Would be the route via the southern. But yeah, I think options unfortunately are pretty limited across that sort of main border between Spain and Portugal.
That's a good route
But
actually
there
from
was talk. Sorry, Mark.
I was going to say that's actually a good route from Seville to Faro. It's a 2 hour bus ride, but if you take the Alsa Reda Express route, they leave from outside Seville station. So you can literally walk out the station. The bus stop is right outside McDonald's outside the station. Hop on, it'll take you straight to Faro, a stone's throw from the city centre.
I was going to add that there was talk in the last year or so, which has gone a bit quiet now, of that direct route being reinstated in 2027, they said, which is next year. Do we know the progress on that? Is that going to happen?
I don't think it'll be 2027. I think it might be 2028. They're building a new route in Portugal and they're doing some lots of work in Spain. And there is talk of them linking up and running a direct train. Initially, it will be slower. It could be 7 hours to start with, slowly reducing in time while they build more bits of high-speed line. But to be honest, I'm not holding my breath. I don't think it'll happen next year.
One other thing I'll just say on sort of Spain and Portugal is another great way to enter is the ferries from the south of the UK. So from Portsmouth, it's about 31 hours. From Plymouth, I believe it's 26, but that's a seasonal service. They only run in the summer. It's very nice. We did the 31 hour and it's a real sort of, switch off from the world, take a stack of books. There's good wine on board. So it's a really nice, really pleasant crossing. And then you're in northern Spain. I'm not going to say the trains in northern Spain are reliable because all of the ones we took were cancelled, but you can kind of cobble together a route with some trains, maybe some buses. Flixbus are very good at covering the gaps in Spain and Portugal, and they're usually quite affordable as well.
Brilliant. Next, I've got a couple of questions on assisted travel. And this one specifically says, is there any eco travel providers that provide a guide for a solo traveler with a disability? And in brackets, they said, just needs someone to pick up / leave at transport to walk with them some congested places, not heavy lifting, just an included assistant or something. But if anyone has any insight on assisted travel in general on top of this, that'd be great.
And I think this will be the last question because we're going to run out of time otherwise.
Can you hear me? Or have I had a power cut? Oh, I've had a power
No, we
cut.
can
No,
hear
we can
you.
hear you. We can hear you,
Oh,
Justin.
right then. Okay. I might have misunderstood the question, but we don't offer an assistant per se, but we can arrange, and you can arrange assistance at any station in Europe. So much like you would in the UK, and they're there to help either with ramps onto the train or help with luggage. Whatever you need, you can normally arrange that, or we can at Byway, we'd arrange that on your behalf to help with any sort of assistance.
We're actually in the process of putting together a guide to assisted travel across Europe. Everything we hear about the Eurostar is that it's amazing and extremely good value. You get cheap tickets and loads of space and cheap tickets for your companion as well. And everyone is so helpful. The challenges are then continuing throughout Europe. So we're in the process of putting that together. I know that's not that helpful right now, but it will be on the website soon.
Okay, is that all we have time for then, Anna?
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up now.
Okay, that's fine. Over to you then.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Matilda, for monitoring all of the questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining this event and for asking your questions. And I'm sorry that we didn't get around to all of them, but hopefully I saw lots of chat going on between everybody who was here. So hopefully if your specific question wasn't answered, someone else answered it for you. As I've mentioned, we will be following up by email. So all of the companies and all of the websites and articles that we've mentioned, we will link to in our follow-up email. So hopefully that will be very useful. And if you have any further questions, just get in touch. You can get directly in touch with us at Flight Free UK. That's info@Flight Free UK, or the people who have contributed as our experts. You can go via their websites as well to inquire, and we will include all of those links in our email to you. So I just want to say on everybody's behalf, a massive, massive thank you so much to our experts who have been absolutely brilliant. Your knowledge knows no bounds. It's fantastic to hear of all your travels and all your advice. So thank you, Claire. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everybody. We will see you again, hopefully, at a future event. And yeah, please do keep an eye out for other Flight Free UK events and all the other travel advice that we're giving. And yeah, please do have fun on your next Flight Free holiday. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.